Now another quick review. I told you that if you can draw a square, you can pretty much construct any geometric shape going. So please continue to practice drawing your squares and your circles and all of those good things, because you see it starting to rise in your compositions. Now, here's the real neat thing. If you can actually draw, and you will be able to draw a cube, then you can draw anything you want in 3 dimensions. So this is a good start of a cube, and it's not technically a cube in perspective, but rather this is a cube in isometric. And you can refer to Francis Ching's design drawing just to see what he has to say about isometric drawings, but here, in a nutshell, is what it is. An isometric drawing has a couple of qualities. As a cube, we know that every single vertex, all of these vertices, are equal. So if this is 2, this is 2, which means its depth is 2, its height is 2, so on and so forth. And we should be able to measure all of those. And let's just do a little double check. Let's say this is my desired proportion. Well, that means, oops, I'm a little not deep enough. Clearly not deep enough on any of those. Its height are all 2, but what I need to do is make it slightly deeper, which I will do. There we go there. And then I can just erase that. So once you have that looking closer to proper dimensions, and this should actually be straight above here, so when those 2 pieces meet, you end up with an isometric drawing of a cube. But I haven't given its most important quality, and that is this is a 30-degree angle. So all of these, as I go off in the distance to describe the depth, these are at 30 degrees, and this is at 30 degrees as well, and everything is parallel. And then this begins your drawing in 3 dimensions in isometric. Not quite perspective, which is entirely different, and we'll get to it a little later on. And if you're to take this drawing, there's your cube, it becomes the basis for many other things. So I happen to know that if I start off with that square, the basis of the cube at the base in isometric, I can draw a pyramid, because I know a pyramid has a square base, and if I draw a diagonal, I can find the center of that pyramid. We can deem it to be a certain height, and from this point, if that's the height of my pyramid, then I simply draw each facet by connecting from the top to the base. And of course, here begins the making of a more 3-dimensional shape into a form by applying some tone. So there's a more 3-dimensional pyramid. How about a cylinder? Well, let's start off again with a square, because we know that the basis of a cylinder is that bottom diameter fits within a square. So let's start off with our isometric square, like so. I'm going to give myself a few more guidelines, parallel here, because now I can draw that circle in isometric. And just so you know, and we'll draw this a little later, but this is actually a true ellipse. That cylinder, as we know, goes up as well. But let's create the top. I need to create the top by finishing off. Those are parallel. This is parallel. This is parallel. Up to there. Draw my guidelines. Draw my ellipse. And lo and behold, we have a cylinder. Much more 3-dimensional if I apply some tone. And if we wanted to create a cone, well, I'm going to use my base drawing here. And knowing that my cone 2 starts off within a square, repeat those guidelines, find the center, and I'm going to draw the base of that cone. And knowing that the cone rises to the top within that packing box, so inside of this little box that we drew before, and we find the center, there's the top of my cone. I can then just draw these sides. And sure enough, with a bit of tone, one more time, we have ourselves a cone. So this is the start of drawing in 3 dimensions and learning how to tone to make it look a bit more 3-dimensional. Now, one thing about doing this, as we've mentioned before, is the ability to use your eye to recognize if you are actually creating those shapes, again in freehand. And you saw how I double checked to see, if my shapes are, where they should be. By all means, use those little cheater methods for sure. Here's one other thing that you can check to see if you're actually creating a cube in isometric. And that is when you trace out all of the outline of that cube in isometric, what you actually end up with is a true hexagon. So the next video is an ode to the hexagon, and it shows you a couple different ways to create that hexagon.